All right. I believe we are on, we are live. Perfect. Cool. So join me on this journey where I'm kind of building this open source, fun, productive Flutter IDE in Flutter. That's an interesting journey. So join me. We kind of learn together how to do that. I think in my first stream we kind of saw how do we display this core component of any ID, which is your project directory, right? Something like this. And we saw that we ended up using a plugin which is Fancy Flutter Tree View. I'm not sure if I got the name right. Yeah, Flutter Fancy Tree View. And then we used this one particular library to kind of show all these files for a selected project working directory. Now, we kind of struggled at the end where we were trying to fix some issues that we found in this. Right, one is, say for example, you have this project tree open and you're kind of working on different files, right? And maybe you're working on different modules, or take for example you're working on building a payment transaction screen, so you might have your payment view, and then you also would have your state. It could be in provider, it could be in riverpod, it could be in getx, whatever. So you might have multiple files and multiple subdirectories open in your project tree. And right when you're working, you might want to kind of minimize this thing, again expand it, right? But when we expand it, as you see here, it doesn't retain the expanded state of this project tree. Fair. So we might have to maintain this state, and I believe the way we can do it is perhaps just store and maintain all the tree nodes that are expanded in some form of a data set, like a set. And again, whenever the widget rebuilds, we try to kind of repopulate and expand those nodes of the tree. That's what we'll try to do. Now, quick overview of the library. We did kind of dive down a deep in my last stream, I believe. Yeah, we did really go down deep in the last stream to check out all the features, but at a higher level, right? I'm gonna quickly walk through that implementation again, so we are up to speed, and then we can work on top to improve it, right? So again, if you look at it, this is where I have my providers, and this is where I have my views. So what I've done is, consider this as the editor view, this section as the tools view. So you'll have number of tools in this section, right? I haven't built the rest of the tools, which is this get and widget tree. But then if you come to this section, you'll see that there is this project explorer view, right? So that is what we're working right now, and that's the source code that will open up right now. Okay, so let me kind of quickly get this thing here, and yeah, there we go. Now this is my provider for the project, right? So when I want to show all the project trees in a project, I would need a provider that provides me the selected working directory, right? So whenever user clicks on this button, you'll be selecting the project directory, and we want to kind of store it, and we want to be able to fetch it whenever necessary, right? So let's have it as a provider. Let's have this string, this directory path as a provider, and then we could reuse it on any widget tree or on inside any widget wherever we want that widget to react to this changes in the project directory path. So of course, tools is one of those. As soon as a new project directory is selected, we want this whole widget to react and reload all the files, so we see all the files from our project directory, and then we can of course select each of these files and then work on top of them, right? So that's what we have right now, right? So this is my project directory provider. The next provider is the files provider, right? So once I select the directory path, I would want to quickly fetch all the files that reside at that directory path, and it could be a collection of files, directories, symbolic links, right? And but of course it will be level 0, right? These are not recursive. I'm not fetching all these files in a recursive manner. I want to be lazy about it. right? So I'll only fetch the children files of a node when I'm trying to expand it or when I'm trying to collapse it, right? So that's much more convenient. So what I've done is I've created a provider called as project files. The major responsibility of this provider is for a given path, it should asynchronously fetch the root level files inside that path. Then ideally, once I fetch it, I would want to sort it, and I want to maybe ignore some of those files, right? I don't want to read system Mac OS cache type files and folders. I want to ignore them, and I would like to sort them also, right? So I'm going to reset this. So if you look at this layout and this arrangement, right, the folders are arranged at the top at the in an alphabetical order, and then followed by all the files again in an alphabetical order, right? So that's what we'll try to achieve today. We'll try I'm sorry, that's what we have achieved so far. So we have this function that loads, that actually fetches file asynchronously, then it sorts them and then ignores a couple of them, and then important part, it returns us a dictionary, a map, right, where the keys are the path and the values are list of files, right? And that's pretty convenient for me. So every time, when I have this widget, right, which is actually responsible to show all these files in a tree format, where I'm using this Flutter fancy tree view to show all these files. What I want to do is I want to first initiate my provider, right? And I'm gonna, since this is init state, so I'm gonna be reading the provider, it's notified specifically, and then I'm gonna be creating a tree controller so that I can actually expand and collapse specific node programmatically. So I have control over my tree. And also I'm passing it the root, which is empty right now. So I haven't read anything yet. So the root would be empty, right? And then of course I have these project files. Or the child provider, which is nothing but where I just have to pass on a getter, and that getter is actually going to fetch all the files for a respective path, right? So it's going to go into the map, and it's going to see whether this path exists, and it's going to fetch all the files at the root level existing in this path. So that's pretty neat for us, right? And in if you observe, in the build method is where I'm actually watching this project files provider with the intention to react to all the changes of these files, right? So that is something we want. So whenever these project directory changes and the files inside it are fetched, we want to quickly show those updated files, right? So even if you see, I have established a dependency between providers, and that's the beauty of RiverPod, right? So I'm saying, hey, I want to read project files, but before I want to read project files, I would like to know the project directory, right? But since both of these, I want to have a dependency in between them, so as to maybe even the project file project directory changes, my files are also updated, right? So I want to establish that kind of dependency, and that's what I've done in the build method of this provider, right? That, hey, watch this project directory path provider, and whenever that path changes, I would want you to load new files and notified all the other subscribers or the widgets that are specifically subscribing, right? So I don't have to kind of write multiple dependencies. I can actually specify those provider dependency inside a provider, and I can combine their state and then use it somewhere, right? So that's pretty convenient and neat for me. Fair. So that's the rundown here. Very simple. I have this files fetch provider which will work asynchronously, and when we have the files, it's going to show it in a tree, right? And if you see what I'm trying to do when I build this tree, it's a very simple logic, right? Inside the node builder, which actually builds these nodes at runtime, actually what it does is it checks whether the file is a directory. If it's a directory, it defines an on click action, right? On click, I want to actually fetch the files if they are not present, right? So what it does is, if a file is a directory, it first tries to see whether I have these files already fetched, its children, right? If I don't have them fetched, then on click it will fetch those files and it will show a loading animator, right? And if those files are there cached, right, or already present in my map, in my state, right, what it's going to do is it's going to take the tree controller and it's going to actually expand it, right, based on the expansion state, right? If it's collapsed, it's gonna expand it, and if it's expanded, it's gonna collapse it, right? And so that's what we are basically doing here. And then of course, if the file is actually a file, then we're just opening the file in a code editor, right? And for code editing, I have used a plugin, or a pub library, which perhaps will come down to when we actually try to improve the code editor. And there are certain improvements I'm actually particularly interested to do, but we'll come there, right? And this is actually my project explorer widget, which is nothing but this widget for this individual row entity or element, right? So anyways, so it's pretty simple widget. It's an inkwell, and inside an inkwell I've got a row, and I've got an icon, and I've got a piece of text, right? So that's that for now. Now what next improvement we are trying to there are two things that we're trying to achieve here. First things first, we want to maintain the state of all the nodes that are being expanded, right? So if I kind of expand this thing, and if I close it, and when I toggle its visibility again, if you observe, this whole thing actually gets rebuilt, right? And what I want to achieve is that when this whole project files tree gets rebuilt, I would like to actually read its state of what nodes were actually expanded, and then perhaps try to expand them again, right? So I did raise this issue on the Flutter tree view GitHub, and the maintainer responded that I might have to extend the tree controller and override certain methods so that it actually has the functionality to store the state. And that's what we'll try to do. So what we'll do is we'll copy this whole piece of code, and we'll try to perhaps use this to use as our tree controller, and we'll see whether that works out for us fine, right? So now if I go here, I'm going to open my controller, and let's see if I do have that in place. Yeah. Okay. So fair enough. I think let's just create a new package controller. Hope I didn't get the spelling wrong. And then we'll add a new file, which is a tree controller, right? Let's see if it's a Dart file. Fair. So we open this as a Dart file, and I'm going to set it up as tree, right? And I'm just going to quickly paste this thing, right? Let's import our packages Flutter Fancy. That should be fine. And perfect. Hooks tree. Now, the last time I was kind of experimenting with this, I already wrote my own controller, which achieved the same thing. So that's what we'll try to reuse instead of fixing this new one, right? So this is my custom tree controller. It is extending an object. It has, yeah, so I think this signature pretty much stays the same. We're taking roots, then we're taking children provider, and we are maintaining set of expanded nodes. And what we're trying to do is get the expansion state, and if that node contains, now okay, so we'll be overriding these two methods, get expansion state, and then the other method is set expansion state. So get expansion state is where we try to see whether the node actually contains the node that I've just clicked on. And then if it does, I want to return that, yeah, I think this node is expanded. And this is my set where I'm actually going to be storing all the nodes that I've expanded. Now, I have deliberately set this thing as a string. I think what Matthews is asking me to do is perhaps store it as a object. Maybe let's just start with an object, so it's just easy for us to work with, and we don't have to do a lot of perhaps serialization if it comes to that. Right. So there you go. So this is my expansion state, and I'm going to check whether this expanded node contains this set contains my node. If it does, of course, the node that I've just clicked is already expand, and it's going to return a false, right? And then when it comes down to setting the expansion state, what I would like to do is I would like to see if the node is expanded. What I'm going to do, yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to the set. Let's see if this works. And then if it's not, I'm going to remove it from this expansion state, which is my set, right? So this is what we are at right now. Maybe I would like to rename this a little bit. uh, yeah, what's a good way to name this? Tree controller. um yeah, what I can name it? Custom. Let's just leave it at custom. All right. So coming back to my file explorer, so now our job is to replace my existing tree controller in my explorer and see if it works out for me, right? So yeah, there we go. So this is my tree controller, and I'm going to replace it with a custom tree controller, right? So there you go. And is there anywhere else we need to update this? No, I don't think so, right? Perfect. I think this is fine for us. The only thing now I am worried about is whether when we toggle the visibility of my tree controller, uh, does that mean when I come to this init state, will it actually reinitialize the whole tree for me, right? And then in that scenario, I don't have I have a new state, and in that scenario, I don't have any state here, and I feel like this is not going to help me much. Maybe I might have to create another provider and then perhaps store all these expanded nodes in that provider and try and read it when I'm trying to initialize it, and then pass it in my, I think, controller, and then again, um, maybe that's the case. Yeah, let's just see if this works out for us in any shape or form. Right, so I'm gonna rebuild my project. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna select my project directory, and that's it. That loads it up, right? So okay, fair enough. This is broken at a fundamental level. Let's just get back to it and see where it is broken. It says unhandled exception, null check operator used on a null value, right? So fair enough. We might have to check this thing now. Okay, if expanded, right? So we might have to do a little bit of a null checkup here. By the way, I've got GitHub Copilot turned on, so it's gonna recommend a lot of piece of code for us, but which is naturally not something we want in this scenario. We don't want to throw a exception. Actually, we would like to handle it. So one thing I want to do is, if it's expanded, I would like to add a node here, right? And then if it's not expanded, I'm gonna have to remove that, and meanwhile I'm gonna have to check the set along with it, and also I'm gonna have to check my whether the set is null or not, right? Okay, so I'm gonna have to be right back in a second. All right, we are back. I'm gonna hide this. Perfect. Let's get on to it. Okay, if or perhaps why do you even I have to set this thing as a null? Can't I just have it as an empty? Yeah, I would actually like to do this. In fact, yeah, and that would be my provider. So I'm gonna have to create a provider which is gonna read all these things and which is also going to set these things to an expanded. So let's try that. Hmm. Now I think this is what we'll need. We'll need a provider of our own, and okay, there we go. So now, okay, did I put it as a named? I would like to have it as a named. So expanded nodes. Perfect. Okay, so now that we have gotten this, I don't think we need this. Can get rid of this. Can get rid of this. Perfect. Let's just rebuild our project and let's just see. At least it's stable and does the behavior that it's doing right now, and then maybe we'll try to kind of improvise on top of it. So I'm going to expand this. Perfect. I think this is working fine for us. All right, now if I close and try to do this, of course it's not gonna work. Fair enough. Let's just also see whether tree controller has a method to expand certain things. Expand find system node and expand. Okay, I think it does have. So maybe, when we do have this initializer, I think maybe we can actually see whether expanding something works, right? So what I'm gonna do, maybe to test it out, I think this is that, and what I could do is I could perhaps try and read my file tree here, and maybe if I could expand it here, would that work? I'm not so sure about that. Okay. What are the listeners that I have access to? Um, add listener. Okay. Register a closure if given object. Okay. Where is that? If listener address twice, I think behavior. Hmm. Interesting. Okay, let's just try to work with it. So coming back to my providers, I'm gonna have to see whether I do have a provider that actually manages to store all these states. So I do have project expanded nodes, and I see that it is of type set string, and it is getting expanded on boolean, and then toggle expanded node. I think it has remove add and clear method. So I can clearly see that we have a provider which is quite capable to handle um, all these scenarios of adding, removing a node of the tree, and also it can clear all the expanded node, and also it can fetch whether something is expanded or not. So I think first milestone for us would be to actually just store all the expanded nodes in this provider, and then when we reinitialize widget, or when we kind of bring it back from visibility, make sure that it actually at least expands the nodes that we had expanded in the previous build, right? So let's just try and do that. And for that, what I have to do is, whenever I do expand something, I will have to add it. All right. Toggle file expansion, get state. All right, let's just try to do it. Ref dot read. So I'm gonna read my provider because I don't want it to be reactive. I just want it to be passive, which is project expanded node provider. It's notifier, and then add, or maybe a toggle would be a better method. Toggle expanded node, and of course I have used here file string, so that's what I'm going to do here, right? File dot path, right? I think that is fair. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm going to be able to toggle this thing here, and that's fine. Okay, I think we are happy with that. The next stage, or the next thing we might have to do, is that once we are storing a toggled entity right here in a state, we also want to be able to reproduce it. Now what would be a good place to reproduce it is something that I'm wondering. Maybe let's try to do it. I think the only thing I am kind of dubious about is that how can I read this project expanded nodes provider here, and then get, or maybe just get its state, and state string expanded nodes, and try and expand it. Oh, sorry, what a typo. Okay, I think that's okay for now. Fair enough. The next entity is a tree controller. Tree controller dot roots are all collapsed, are all expanded, is, so these are all functions, has listener, breadth first search. I don't know what this does actually. Collapse, it's going to collapse a specific node. And then there must be a subsequent expand method too. Is there a bulk expand somewhere? I do see there is an expand all, depth first, default, expand cascading. What does that even mean? I don't know what that means. Okay, let's just see what this method actually does. Expand cascading. Traverse subtrees of a node in depth, first order expanding every visited node, then calls rebuild. Okay, we don't need that. I think basically what it's trying to say is it's going, once you expand a node, I think it's going to traverse the tree in a depth first order. So it's gonna expand all the subfolders at the level 1, and we don't need that. We just want to be able to expand the nodes that are supposed to be expanded. And let's just see if we are able to do that, honestly. So I'm gonna do that expand method here, and I'm gonna have to pass it. Maybe I'm gonna have to iterate over expanded nodes dot for each. Tree controller. Okay. Okay. And in that scenario, should my provider instead be of the type tree node? If that is what it is doing, maybe that should be the case. In fact, t node, so that is file. So it should be of the type file, I believe so. So maybe let's just change that to file system entity. And see what kind of behavior we get. Node. Perfect. Cool. Let's just run our build runner and see where we're at. Okay. Perfect. This should do its job. It should rebuild all our. So just a side note, I'm using Riverpod code generation. It kind of reduces majority of the boilerplate code that I tend to, or I end up writing. So this is the annotation that actually generates a state notifier provider, if I'm not mistaken. And I just have to provide the return type and it'll pretty much figure out the rest for it. So that's amazing. So let's get back to business. So this is fine. It's going to toggle it. And then for each element, I'm going to have to pass here our file system file. Okay. And then perhaps, I think that's fine. Maybe it's also write a method that returns my state. Get expanded nodes, and that's what I'm gonna do here. That's perfect. I don't know why Dart Analyzer always asks me to change the for each loop to for loop. I don't know what's the idea behind that, but fair enough. Let's just do that. For file system in this set, I would like to expand and let's just rebuild, right? So what I would like to do is if my expanded nodes is not empty. That's where we, okay, I think that's fair. Let's just try it out. Let's just hope this doesn't bug out on us. Yeah. Okay, so I expanded this, right? Now, okay. Tree, try to modify a provider while the widget tree was building. Of course. I get it, what has happened. Let's see the run. I hope I'm not watching it somewhere at the build. No, not really. I'm not. That seems fine to me. File system. Okay, what it's saying is key. If you're encountering this error, chances are you tried to modify a provider in a widget lifecycle, such as, but not limited to, build, init, state, dispose. I actually don't think so. Okay. So is this the toggling that's not allowing me to, or is it the expanded thing? Toggle. I hope I'm okay. Let's just try to not do this. Okay, so that is kind of interesting. Maybe in this scenario, I don't actually have to do all this thing. Or maybe if I don't do this here. So I feel we might have to read this at the init state, so that it doesn't bother us while we are rebuilding the widget. But at this moment, let's just see whether the toggling is even happening or not. All right, so I'm gonna again run this thing here, and I'm gonna try to, okay, it's not even letting us toggle. Move the logic modifying your provider outside a widget lifecycle. For example, you could update your provider inside up on pressed. Okay, maybe we can do that. Let's just try that. Okay, this is where I'm getting my file descendant, so maybe this is the right way. I guess so. Let's rebuild. Choose. Okay, but I don't think this does the job. I think we might have to rewrite another method that actually takes this controller, also expands it, and fair enough, let's just do that. So this is void toggle tree node, and it's gonna take a tree controller, and the job it's going to do is this specifically. Yeah. There we go. We have our file, and then this is what we intend to do. And this is the method that we'll be using whenever we press. Fair enough. Let's see. Okay, rebuild, select file, choose. Fair enough. I think this is working out fine for us for now. The next thing is we want to make sure when this thing actually is being rebuilt, it actually expands stuff. And let's see if that's something that's possible for us. So, and before that, I would like to actually open this up in a debug mode if possible, because I want to keep track of these expanded nodes. Okay, so let's do that. I don't think this is the most efficient way we are handling it. It should have been done in the controller itself, but then again, let's just try to do this and see whether this works out and really understand how this controller works. So if you see, again, I think that's fine. I don't care about that. Fair. I'm gonna again open views here. I think it's gonna be empty yet because we are not watching it, and I think that's fair enough for us. Right now, when I kind of close this thing, right, and when I open it, what does it tell me? Oh, it's still giving me empty. Why? Why is that? Why is that? Why is it not toggling? Contains node. Okay, and or else it should add it, right? Fair. Okay, this is confusing me. Can I print my state here? Okay, let's just see. Okay, does it log? Okay, let's just see here. Yeah. Okay, I don't think this is working in that scenario. If expanded, interesting. Why is this not being called? If I go here and then check this out. Okay, there we go. We select this tree and we try to expand it. It's not doing its job. again. Hmm. Okay. Oh. Okay. So this is showing a bit weird behavior. It is a bit working, but I see that the states are not in sync. I think it's not be. I think we have not managed the life cycle, widget life cycle well, and that's why it's kind of behaving in a different way. So right now it's removing the widget. I think yeah, that's not what we're looking for. Okay, fair enough. I think this needs a bit more work. I believe one thing we really have to make sure is that we make sure that these methods that we have overridden actually are the ones that we use, so that whenever, because these methods are being called, I believe this expansion state must be getting called even if you are expanding and collapsing all the nodes. So I believe we still have to figure out a way to stay in sync with this. So let's just kind of let's just maybe take a break and try to do that in the next session, I believe. And let's hope by the time we might have figured out a way to achieve this behavior. Right. All right. Until then, check out the repo, start the repo, sub the channel. All right. See you. Bye.